The study design for 2024 and the VCE exam itself has changed pretty significantly. But are you familiar with all of those changes and what they'll mean for you? If you're in year 11 or 12, you're probably about to start your crafting texts or creating texts area of study. But if you're in year 12, this area of study will be completely different than what you're used to. But I've read through the study design and the VCE exam, so let me walk you through those changes. We'll give you a picture of what you're going to be studying in term 2, and then we'll look at the exam itself. So what's so different about the creative this year? Well, now, rather than writing a creative piece about your mentor text, you're going to be writing a creative piece inspired by your mentor text. Let me explain. In the past, you used to study a mentor text or texts, and then in the crafting or creating texts area of study, you'd be asked to create your own piece of writing that draws directly from that text. So that might mean writing in the style of the author, writing from the perspective of a different character, writing a deleted scene or a new scene for the story, or following on after the story ends, for example. You were essentially asked to write a kind of fan fiction about the text that you studied. All of that has shifted. Now, you're going to be asked to consider the ideas, themes, and concerns that your text explores and create your own piece of writing that draws on those ideas in your own way. You can still choose the form you want to write in, whether that's a short story, a memoir, an essay, a speech, a podcast, so on and so forth. But now, say you're writing a short story, you'll create your own narrative world, your own characters, write in your own voice or style as an author, so long as your text draws on the ideas that you were unpacking in your mentor text when you analysed it. You have a lot more creative freedom to write about what you want to write about. You'll also consider your author's purpose, their context, or their intended audience, and you'll think about your own purpose, context, and audience when writing your piece. Okay, so this is quite a shake-up. What will this area of study actually look like now? Well, if you're studying Unit 3, you will be the first to come across the brand new thematic frameworks that will shape what you study over the next term. So there are 4 thematic frameworks outlined in the study design. Your school will pick one of them and you will study one of them. So let's break each of them down. The first is writing about protest. The study design tells us that this thematic framework wants us to look at notions of conflict and contest, the value of protest, the outcomes of it, personal stories of protest, what it means to protest, and struggle and war. There are 4 relatively short texts you might read that all come in different forms, including an essay about the first Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras and a monologue by Maine Wyatt about anti-Indigenous racism in Australia. If you're studying this framework, you'll likely read one or all of those 4 short texts, then you'll create your own text that draws on those ideas about the value of protest and what it means to protest. The next framework is writing about country. This framework considers the idea of connection to country and our sense of belonging in certain places. It looks at remembering country and nostalgia, the power of connection with the land, loss of country and dispossession, immigration and cultural displacement, and the impact of climate change in the changing landscapes. There's also 4 short works that you can engage with, including extracts from Maxine Beneba Clarke's The Hate Race, as well as Anton Chekhov's short story Gooseberries from 1898. Next is writing about personal journeys. So the central ideas of this framework surround our personal milestones, how key events have affected our life trajectory, how we vicariously learn values and attitudes from those around us, and how we tell our stories and other people's stories. The last of the thematic frameworks is writing about play. Now this one's interesting. It explores the idea of play in terms of traditions of playing in our lives across cultures or moments of history. So this could refer to games, sports, acting or make-believe, music, language, etc. Could also look at ideas of collaboration and connection, at rules or rule breaking, or the way that we understand or reflect the real world through play acting or make-believe. So this is what you'll be working on in this area of study. But I mentioned earlier that the VCE exam itself has been changed pretty significantly to reflect these changes to the study design. Let's take a look at what you'll now be doing on your final exams. So on the exam, section A, your text response, and section C, your argument analysis sections, remain mostly the same. However, section B on the exam was previously dedicated to the comparative study, and you'd be asked to write an essay comparing two set texts. Now, if there's anyone out there who has been preparing themselves or bracing themselves for the comparative study this year, guess what? The comparative is scrapped, both from your study during the school year, and the essay has been taken off the exam entirely. Now, section B has been completely replaced with a section on crafting texts and creating a piece of writing inspired by your thematic framework. Starting off basic, as the instructions on the sample exam here tell us, you'll be expected to write a creative piece on your framework of ideas in whatever form you like, excluding song, poetry, or verse. You should think about your audience and your context, and your writing should have a clear purpose, incorporating at least one of the following intentions: to explain, to express, to reflect, or to argue. If the exam tells us to incorporate at least one, that usually means we should aim for more than one. Now, I'd keep all of this in mind. However, I will say, since most pieces of writing out there probably fall into one of those four categories, I wouldn't stress too much about that little detail there. Your markers also want you to write coherently and consider your vocabulary, your text structures, and your language forms and features. But now to look at the actual nature of the task. Your text should draw on a few different things. Firstly, it should draw on your framework of ideas and the sort of themes and concerns you explored earlier in the year. Secondly, it should draw on the stimulus material that you're provided. The exam will have a different collection of stimulus material for each of the different thematic frameworks, so flip through the paper until you find the framework that you studied. Let's look at this example for writing about country. You'll be given a set, non-negotiable title, and your work needs to reflect the title of your piece. You'll also be given 3 pieces of stimuli and asked to draw on at least one of these in your writing. Again, that means we should aim for more than one of them. So in this example, you'd craft a piece of writing about the ideas of the Writing About Country framework, reflecting the title, My Country is Calling, and drawing on one or preferably more of the stimulus options here. This might seem like a lot of info to wrap your head around, but luckily we are coming out with a brand new study guide on how to write a killer creative that is updated for the new study design and features all of the info that you'll need to smash it out of the park both next term and later in the year. I think some students are going to love this change, really appreciate the creative freedom they get here, and also rejoice over the fact they don't have to write the comparative essay. But I also think a lot of students will find this really difficult. So what do you think? Drop me a comment and let me know what your thoughts are, and also ask any questions you might have about the changes to the study design and what they mean for you.